is coming back.
Be fearless.
Fearless. Okay, so that could be a principle.
Believe.
Belief.
Belief system.
Belief system. Okay.
It's like introspection as to what principles have guided you in your life.
Yes, brilliant. Brilliant. Actually, I'm coming to that exactly. What are the principles that you operate under? Yes, go ahead.
Your
I'm coming to you.
values. Your values.
Your values. Values, principles. Okay.
Discipline.
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 Discipline. Yeah, I think discipline is also another key word.
Rules that you live by.
Rules that you live by.
Integrity, high integrity.
Integrity. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Be
Credibility,
resilient.
integrity,
Be resilient.
believability.
Be resilient.
Resilient. Another nice word for principles. Yes.
Recipe.
Recipe. That's what also Ray Dalio calls it. He says it's a recipe for success.
Success.
Yeah. So
Vision of your life.
consistency, yes, steadfastness, resilience, lot of similar sounding words.
Definitely.
Yes, Nagamani.
Intention and purpose.
Intention, purpose. Yes, very nice. Very solid words that tilt particularly. Intention,
I'd say, learning.
learning,
From your
learning continually. Yes, learning from failures. Yes, good. So we're going to cover a lot of that today. A lot of it. So this is going to be an interactive session. It's going to be very dynamic. And Ray Dalio calls his principles. He says the principle. He says it's an algorithm that you can use time and time again because situations tend to recur. So what is your go-to formula when something happens and you've seen that before? So there are two dimensions to this and I want to call it out. One is, the part of the brain called the basal ganglia. I think most TILT members are aware. Those who are the new members, maybe we'll do a special session for you on the brain and how it works. But I'm not going to go back into that. I'm just saying basal ganglia is responsible for habits. So from the basal ganglia, any case your principles are being applied without your knowledge. So I'm going to cover some very key factors today. So the higher brain and the lower brain is what also Ray Dalio talks about. So the higher brain, for those who know the brain and how it works, is the primate brain or the prefrontal cortex. It's our higher self. It's what makes us human. And human is the only animal that uses the prefrontal cortex. So here we can think, we can analyze, we can retrospect, we can extrapolate. So it's very important that you understand the power of the prefrontal cortex, or what Ray Dalio calls the higher brain. But the lower brain is more reactive. It's more instinctive. It does things quickly. So the lower brain comes into play when you don't know what to do. The default setting is lower brain. But Ray Dalio calls this lower brain. He says your wild dogs are then, attacking others. Because the lower brain is to keep you alive. Right? So that he equates the lower brain as the reptilian and the mammalian brain. He doesn't call it out like that, but I'm doing the extrapolation for you. I'm saying the lower brain, when it decides, it does reactionary stuff, instinctive stuff, subconscious stuff. If you haven't put your lower brain into a proper form, so for instance, if somebody pulls out a knife in front of you on a dark street, if you are not trained to handle somebody with a knife, your heart will be racing, triple the normal working, or pace. But this is how they subtly tell me, please write something on the board. Have you noticed?
I'm getting
This is called subtle motivation.
He said they might not write.
There is a markers here. Okay. Yeah, we'll use it. देखा जाता क्या होता है. You can always see. Yeah, so that lower brain is operational, yes. Give me not allow. Higher brain is देखा जाएगा. So there's this constant tussle between the lower brain and the upper brain. Okay, so this is one part of the problem when we try to understand ourselves and we try to establish truth. Which brain are you operating from? Again, in the upper brain, let me tell you, there is these again two divisions. there's the left brain and the right brain. So are you the logical type? Are you the data processing type? Analytical? Or are you the intuitive, instinctive, innovative type? Or the creative type? That's also right brain. So unfortunately, most people who are creative can't be logical. Most people who are logical can't be creative. So we are always having this problem of who are we? Ideally, you should be able to toggle between the left brain and right brain. Ideally, you should be able to toggle between upper brain and lower brain. So if you do this in 4 quadrants, left brain, right brain on top, and the other brain down, which is the reactive, the upper brain, lower brain in terms of logical, analytical, everything there, but also here reactive, they are responsive. I think you're going to start to understand that you don't understand yourself first. I'm pretty sure here most people, if I ask them to describe themselves, will probably do about a 50% job, maybe less than that, maybe less. So today's session, I want you to understand yourself better, number 1. I want you to start to create your own principles, number 2, because Ray Dalio, although he's given 200 principles in his book, and it's an excellent book, thank you. Thanks very much. Hey, some of you, let's give a good round of applause to this guy. He looks out of the hall and thank you so much. What's your name?
Sunil.
Sunil, thank you so much for all the good work. Appreciate it. So we got formally, those who were a little worried that we can't write on the board, he's given us the markers. That's the way of that. Okay, so today's session is going to make you understand yourself first. It's also going to make you understand the power of people and why we are a tribe and therefore why are we progressing faster than everybody else. And let me tell you, it's quite apparent or obvious that TILT members are proceeding faster than their average before they joined TILT. How many say yes to that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I see from outside. Huge increment in the rate of change. So momentum, acceleration, those are key words for TILT. Somebody like a Pankaj, I don't know, you've seen him a few months ago and see him now. Dramatic change. And like I said, the biggest, biggest authentication or validation of change is when your wife says you improved a lot. Yeah, his wife says that. You say yes to that?
Yes.
Become Raj. Bullet Raja from Raja.
Bullet Raja. Spouse. No, when your spouse says yeah, so that can be either male or female. Yeah, and now in our Old Boys Association, we put, words purporting to be the masculine, could be the feminine or any other gender. Yeah, so now it's not just, spouse can be anyone.
Here, as of now, it's
Yeah. Same gender, other gender, anything is okay. No gender. Why didn't I think of that? No gender. काफी options है उसमें. More options equals more power. Please write it down. More options equals more power. Yeah. So no gender means anything you can do. यहाँ भी जा सकते हो, वहाँ भी जा सकते हो. क्या है? It's called AC/DC. Yeah, seriously. That's the term. AC/DC. You can bend both ways. You should know all this. It's not something crude or rude I'm talking about. It's all just scientific stuff. Okay, getting back to principles. I want all of you to start to understand what are the principles under which you operate. The basal ganglia will take over 90% of all our decisions are taken automatically, without our knowledge, subconsciously. And we are just creatures of habit, so we just do what we are supposed to do. That's it. We don't even understand why we are doing it. So again, the old paradigm of unconscious incompetence, I don't know that I don't know, is the first level of learning. Then, I know that I don't know, conscious incompetence, I know that I don't know. Then, conscious competence, I know that I know because I've gone for classes, I've gone to get coaching and mentoring and all that. So, I know that I know now. And then you're so good at that it becomes automatic, so you don't know that you know. It's called unconscious competence. So we go from unconscious incompetence, I don't know that I don't know, to conscious incompetence, I know that I don't know. Then we come on top of that, which is conscious competence, which is I know that I know. And then the last one, unconscious competence, which is I don't know that I know, because I do it automatically. So those are the 4 stages of learning, and we should strive to reach the top phase. So if your principles are put into play in such a way that they become automatic, and you don't even know that you are using it, but you're operating on a higher level, let me tell you, you're already guru in a lot of ways. So people who just do what they have to do and they don't even have to think about it, and they're successful more times than anybody else, have understood this unconscious incompetence stage. So if we can work our principles such that they become practices, then you don't have to think about principles. But if you're not yet made the practice of succeeding properly enough, then you have to go back to principles. And the way that Ray Dalio, very common, he's a common man in a lot of ways, struggled through life, had to work when he was a youngster. He was a caddy at age 13, and he was caddy for people like Jimmy Carter and all that. So he met some of the big guys on the golf course carrying their bags, and he used to make $6 for carrying their bag. And at 13 he started investing in stock. And he wasn't a brilliant stock market guy those days. He runs the biggest hedge fund in the world, most successful. Maximum return to all the investors with him. $68 billion in so many years. Return to investors. So he's a great guy, but he was a poor guy to start with. And the principle that he employed that time as a 13-year-old was he invested in stock. But his principle was he didn't know about stocks and shares and 200 moving day averages. So what did he do? He said he looked at the lowest stock value. He said there was only one stock below $5. He said that's the only one I can afford, I'll buy that. Because you're earning $6 an hour. So if you do 2 trips, you got $12. So you can invest in 2 stocks of that $5 company. To his good luck, that company value tripled. So his $5 became $15. 300% improvement. So he wasn't a genius, but since he was making money like that, which other people could not make, suddenly he realized, I should make more money and I should invest more money. That's all. That was his secret of success. Later he understood stock market and ups and downs and the crests and troughs and the 200-day moving averages. Later. Much later. And then 3 of his friends across the globe with him got over, and they called the company Bridgewater because he says we need a bridge across the waters. That's the name. That's how the name came. There's no other logical thing. He said all these guys are across the waters. They're across the oceans in other ways. So he says we need a bridge across those oceans because we are all connected. So somebody got some commodity there, he'll send it here, we'll sell it here. Something from here we can send there. He did commodity trading. So that's how he started to make money. But the good thing was he kept a notebook and he made a note of all the decisions that he took. And he says principles come from decisions. Now the decisions are not the only thing. Why you took those decisions is actually where the principle is starting to apply. So why did he do what he did? The other part of principles, he says, life is like a loop. It keeps coming back to that point. So when you come back to a certain point, at that point, what are the principles you apply to be successful? You use that same principle again, automatically you're successful again. So what he's saying is, if you start to apply your principles consciously from the higher brain, then you start to become more successful. Very simple, very, very useful philosophy. Life is going to keep on coming back in these loops. When it comes back, do you know at that point what are the principles that you applied last time? Use it again, no rocket science, you'll succeed again. If you're not succeeding, then introspection comes in, then reanalysis, and then you start to iterate it differently. So I'm going to now call out some, one of his main points in the book. He said life is a journey. You have to know your destination. That's your goal. We call it a goal. You can call it a mission, whatever you like. So I'll use the board for this one. So he says, we start off somewhere, but he says you have to have some sort of a goal. You're heading in some direction. So the first thing you require is a goal. He says, but you know what? In spite of taking your goals and starting to work on them, life is not going to be giving you success right from day one. In fact, more often than not, because you're trying something new, you're going to fail. So he gives this picture of him tripping on a stone and falling over. Then he's trying to jump over some pile of rocks and he gets tripped on the top rock and he falls down. But every time he realizes that he's fallen, he doesn't sit and mope about it. He says, why did I fall? Why did I fall? Why did I fail? And there is the starting of the evolution of principles. So you start the goal, but the goal suddenly goes downhill like this. So at this point, he says, you got a problem. Now how do you counter this problem? He says, don't sit and mope, don't cry and curse your karma, but instead analyze what went wrong. So that phase he calls diagnosis. Diagnosis. You analyze. You figure it out. Now, this doesn't stop here. Now, he says, you make a loop like this, but this loop is giving you different points on the loop. You have got a problem, you diagnosed it. Now what do you do? Design. Design the solution. And he says, you do that solution, you put it, you take action here, then you continue doing. So this is where you keep on doing it. And again you'll get another loop, again you'll trip. But ideally, every time this loop comes up, you can go further and further. So if I can take this loop forward, and if I can take it higher, you understand what I'm saying? So these trip-ups are going to keep on happening. Don't feel too bad about it. Accept it as norm and say, every time something new happens, something pulls me down, I'm happy about it because I'm going to get new principles. It's a very solid formula. So you don't cry, you don't crib, you don't curse, you don't make excuses, you don't blame.